You know, Alex, I spent the first decade of my life as a maker terrified of this little piece of hardware. I'd look at a spray gun and see a high speed delivery system for regret. I figured if I didn't have a pressurized clean room and a degree in fluid dynamics, I was just going to turn a walnut dresser into a giant sticky fly trap.
Well, to be fair, your shop usually has enough floating dust to classify as a weather event, but I get it. To a hobbyist, spraying feels like the big leagues. It feels like something you only do when you've graduated from the School of Streaks and Bristles.
That's the lie we tell ourselves while we're standing there for 3 hours with a brush, praying the bubbles level out before the varnish set becomes permanent. The truth is, once you get the rhythm, spraying is actually the most forgiving way to move finish from a can to a board. It's like the difference between painting a wall with a Q-tip or a roller.
Okay, but you're a pro. For the person sitting in their garage right now with one project they've spent 6 months building, the stakes are high. One wrong move with a spray gun, and you've got a run that looks like a stalactite hanging off your project.
Oh, I've grown plenty of those. But look, that's why we're talking about this. The guerrilla way to do this isn't about expensive booths. It's about understanding that air and finish are just having a conversation, and you're the moderator.
So, if someone is ready to put down the brush, where are they actually putting their money? I see HVLP everywhere. Is that the gold standard or just the best marketing?
For us, it's the only way to fly, high volume, low pressure. Think of it like a garden hose with a really sophisticated nozzle. Old school pneumatic guns use massive pressure, like 60 psi. It's like trying to water a violet with a fire hose. Half the finish just bounces off the wood and ends up in your lungs or on your garage door. That's blowback.
Which is basically throwing money into the air.
Exactly. An HVLP system, especially a turbine unit, is much gentler. It's like a warm breeze carrying the finish. You get 60 to 80% of the material actually staying on the wood. And since it's a dedicated turbine, the air is dry. If you use a standard compressor, you're constantly fighting moisture and oil mist. There's nothing that'll ruin your day faster than a tiny bead of compressor oil hitting a fresh coat of lacquer. It looks like a crater on the moon.
So a turbine is the buy once, cry once solution?
Usually, yeah, but you can get a conversion gun if you've already got a beefy compressor. Just make sure it can handle the CFM, the volume. Most small pancake compressors will wheeze and die trying to keep up with a spray gun. They just don't have the lungs for it.
Let's talk about the juice. What are we actually putting in these guns? Because I've heard horror stories about people trying to spray house paint and ending up with a textured ceiling effect on their coffee table.
Yeah, if it's thick enough to put on waffles, it's not going through a spray tip. I use the drip test. I'll stir the finish, lift the stick, and watch it. If it doesn't break into fast, clean droplets, it needs a drink of thinner.
But isn't there a science to it? I've seen those little funnel cup things, viscosity cups.
They're great if you want to be precise. And honestly, for a beginner, they're a lifesaver. You time how long it takes the cup to empty. If the manual says 20 seconds and you're at 40, you're basically trying to spray molasses.
And the finish itself matters, right? You're a big fan of the fast and thin approach.
Shellac and lacquer are my best friends. They dry so fast, the dust doesn't have time to find them. I can spray a chest of drawers and have the hardware back on in a few hours. If you're using those heavy, slow-drying varnishes, you're just inviting every ladybug in the county to come take a permanent nap in your top coat.
The amber fossil look, very trendy. But what about the health side? I know you're a bit of a wood smoke and whiskey guy, but your lungs probably don't love lacquer thinner.
Don't tell my doctor I said this, but I've moved almost entirely to waterborne finishes.
Wait, the master of tradition is using water-based?
Hey, I'm a craftsman, not a martyr. The new waterborne polys and acrylics are incredible. Plus, they don't turn your workshop into a potential fuel air bomb. If you spray old school nitrocellulose lacquer without an explosion-proof fan, you're one spark away from meeting your ancestors. With water-based, I wear a good respirator, crack a window, and I don't have to worry about my shop becoming a crater.
Okay, let's talk technique. I see people waving the gun around like they're casting a spell. What's the actual pro movement?
It's all about the parallel pass. The biggest mistake is the rainbow. People pivot their wrist, so the gun is close in the middle and far at the ends. That gives you a heavy center and a dry, dusty edge. You have to move your whole arm like it's on a sliding rail. Keep it the same distance from the wood the whole way across.
And you don't just hold the trigger down and go to town, right?
No, that's how you get the puddle at the edges. You start moving before you pull the trigger, and you release the trigger before you stop moving. It's like a plane landing and taking off. And overlap your passes by about 50%. You're not trying to get full coverage in one go. You're building a ghost of a layer then another, then another.
What about the tricky stuff, inside a cabinet or an underside of a table? That's where I always see people get into trouble with dry spray.
Ah, the interior vortex. When you spray into a box, the air hits the back and bounces right back at you, drying the finish in midair. It turns into sandpaper. My trick? Start with the corners and the hard to reach spots first. Get the skeleton done, then do your big flat show surfaces last. That way, any overspray from the tricky bits gets buried under the final smooth pass.
I remember you telling me about your heirloom disaster a few years back, the one with the table.
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, I was rushing a dining table for a client. It was humid, August in the South, so the air was basically soup. I didn't check my gear, didn't check the weather, and I just went for it. The finish blushed. It turned this ghostly, milky white because moisture got trapped under the surface. It looked like the table had seen a ghost.
And the fix was?
Sanding it all back to zero and starting over. I paid my dues that day, as the old guys say, but it taught me the most important lesson. The weather is your boss. If it's 90% humidity or 40 degrees in your shop, go inside and watch a movie. The wood isn't going anywhere, and the finish isn't going to cooperate.
So, if someone is listening to this and they've got their first real project sitting on the bench, maybe it's an engagement gift or a crib for a new baby, what's the one thing they shouldn't do?
Don't let that project be your first time pulling the trigger. Seriously. I don't care how many YouTube videos you've watched. Go to the scrap bin, find a piece of plywood that's lived a hard life, sand it down, and practice your transitions. Learn how it feels when the gun is singing and when it's spitting.
It's about building the muscle memory before the stakes are high.
Exactly. You want to be bored by the time you get to the actual furniture. You want it to feel like a foregone conclusion, because when you see that first coat lay down perfectly flat, no brush marks, no dust nibs, just a wet, glassy sheet, it's a high you'll be chasing for the rest of your life.
It sounds like the spray gun isn't a shortcut. It's just a better tool for the finish line.
Well said. It's about giving the wood the respect it deserves at the very end of the journey. You've spent weeks cutting joinery and sanding. Why stumble in the last 10 yards with a crusty brush?
Fair point. I think I'm ready to try it. But if I blow up my garage, I'm telling the insurance company it was your idea.
Use water-based, Alex. Your garage and your eyebrows will thank you. The big takeaway today? Don't fear the gear. Finishing isn't a dark art. It's just physics and patience. Get a decent HVLP, thin your material until it runs like cream, and keep your arm moving. The wood will do the rest of the work for you.
And maybe check the weather app before you start.
Especially that. See you in the shop, Alex.
See ya, Tiger.